Hello guys. In this video, we will talk about the prokaryotic cell. The last video was all about the eukaryotic cell, but now we will talk about the prokaryotic cell. What is a prokaryotic cell? The prokaryotic cell are cells that do not have a true nucleus, while the eukaryotic have a nucleus or a membrane-bound organelles. Organisms with the domains bacteria and archaea, that is the prokaryotic cell, have prokaryotic cells, while other forms of life are eukaryotic because they have a nucleus. However, organisms with prokaryotic cells are abundant and make up much of Earth's biomass. Organisms that have prokaryotic cells are unicellular and are called prokaryotes. Prokaryotic cells can be contrasted with eukaryotic cells, which are more complex, while eukaryotic cells have a nucleus surrounded by a nuclear membrane, rather, and also have other organelles that perform specific functions in the cell. The prokaryotic cell contains a single membrane which surrounds the cell as an outer membrane. All the reactions within a prokaryote therefore take place within the cytoplasm of the cell. While this makes the cell slightly less efficient, the prokaryotic cells still have a remarkable reproductive capacity. A prokaryote reproduces through binary fission, a process which simply splits duplicated DNA into separate cells without any organelles or complex chromosomes to reproduce. Most prokaryotic cells can divide every 24 hours or even faster with an adequate supply of food. While many prokaryotic cells have adapted to free living within the environment, many more have adapted to live within the gut of other organisms. These commensal organisms survive by breaking down molecules inside the gut and allow the organisms they are living within the ability to digest a wider variety of foods. For example, the human gut contains 2 to 3 pounds of bacteria, as I searched it earlier, which have evolved to help us digest complex carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And we will go to the example of prokaryotic cells. Just like I mentioned earlier, the prokaryotic cells are the bacterial cells and archaeal cells. First is the bacteria. What is bacteria? Bacteria are single-celled or microorganisms that are found nearly everywhere on Earth, and they are very diverse in their shapes and structures. The cell walls of bacteria contain peptidoglycan, a molecule made of sugars and amino acids that gives the cell wall its structure and is thicker in some bacteria than others. Bacteria contain certain structures unique to them, as previously mentioned, such as the capsule, flagella, and pili. Some bacteria can form endospores. These are tough, dormant structures that the bacteria can reduce themselves to under starvation condition when not enough nutrients are available. They do not need nutrients and are resistant to extreme temperatures, UV rays, and chemicals. When environment conditions become favorable again, the endospore can reactivate. That is why the next cell is next prokaryotic cell of the example of prokaryotic cell is the archaeal cell. What is the archaeal cell? Archaea are similar size and shape to bacteria, and they are also unicellular. Since bacteria and archaea are the two types of prokaryotes, this means that all prokaryotes are unicellular. That it is. Some archaea are found in extreme environments, such as hot springs, but they can be found in variety of locations such as soil, oceans, marshlands, and inside other organisms, including humans. Like bacteria, archaea can have a cell wall and flagella. However, the structure of these organelles is different from bacteria. For example, the archaeal walls do not contain peptidoglycan, while the bacteria have or has. In addition, the flagella of archaea work the same way as those of bacteria, but they evolved from different structures. The membranes of archaea are very different than those of all other life forms. They contain different lipids, which they have different stereochemistry. Uh, while the archaea usually have one circular chromosome as bacteria do. And that is the difference, that is the example of the prokaryotic cells and the differences of archaeal cell and bacterial cell in the prokaryotic cell. And we will go to the prokaryotic cell structure. Prokaryotic cells do not have true nucleus. That is what I have mentioned earlier. Uh, the the eukaryotic cell has only a nucleus that contains their genetic materials as eukaryotic cells do. Instead, prokaryotic cells have a nucleoid region, which is an irregularly shaped region that contains the cell's DNA and is not surrounded by a nuclear envelope. Some other parts of prokaryotic cells are similar to those in eukaryotic cells, such as a cell wall surrounding the cell which is also found in plant cells, although it has different composition. Like eukaryotic cell, the prokaryotic cell have a cytoplasm, the gel-like substance that makes the filling of the cell, or the end, or the the that holds up the substance, and a cytoskeleton that holds components in the cell in place. Both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells have ribosomes. The dot, or the what you call that, it's like a circle, tiny circles, which are organelles that produce proteins and vacuoles, small spaces in cells that store nutrients and help estimate wastes. Some prokaryotic cells have flagella, which are tail-like structures that enable the organism to move around. They may also have pili, small hair-like structures that help bacteria adhere to surface and can allow DNA to be transferred between two prokaryotic cells in a process known as conjugation. So, what is conjugation? Conjugation is the process by which one bacterium transfers genetic material to one another through direct contact. That is the conjugation. During conjugation, There is one bacterium serves as the donor of the genetic material, and the other serves as the recipient. The donor bacterium carries a DNA sequence called the fertility factor or F factor. All prokaryotic cells have a nucleoid region, DNA and RNA as their genetic material, then the ribosomes that make proteins, and the cytoplasm that contains the cytoskeleton, which organizes and supports the parts of the cell. That is why what I mentioned earlier. The prokaryotic cells are simpler than eukaryotic cells, and an organism that is a prokaryote is unicellular. It is made up of only one prokaryotic cell. And we will go to the parts of eukaryotic cell. Unlike the prokaryotic cell, unlike the eukaryotic cell, as you can see, the prokaryotic cell have no distinct organelles bound by membranes. Instead, the many reactions the cell conducts happen within the cytoplasm of the cell. In fact, there are two main components that there are present within all prokaryotic cells. The first is a cell membrane. This is the layer of phospholipid molecules which separate the inside of the cell from the outside. While not present in all prokaryotes, many secrete a cell wall that used to protect and house the cell in an extra layer of proteins and structural molecules. The second part in all prokaryotic cell is DNA. The DNA is the basic blueprint or the code for all life and is found within all cells. In prokaryotes, DNA often takes the form of a large circular genome that is can be compared to the organized chromosomes which are typically found within eukaryotes. This large circle of DNA directs which proteins the cell creates and regulates the action of the cell. Other prokaryotic cells can have a large number of different parts such as cilia and flagella to help them move around. While these structures are similar in function to those found within eukaryotes, they have they often have a different structure. This suggests that the two types of cell have undergone very different selection processes and independently involved structures. And you are curious how the prokaryotic cell divides because they are different from eukaryotic cells. The prokaryotic cells divide through the process of binary fission. Unlike mitosis, this process does not involve the condensation of DNA or the duplication of organelles. Prokaryotic cells have only a small amount of DNA, which is not stored in complex chromosomes. Furthermore, there are no organelles, so there is nothing to divide. Um, when a prokaryotic grows to a large size, the process of binary fission takes place. That is what it is. This process duplicates the DNA, then separates each new strand of DNA into individual cells. This process is the simpler than mitosis, and as such, bacteria can reproduce much faster. And that is all for the topic of prokaryotic cell, and I hope you understand. Thank you for listening.